6 o'clock. The Israeli military says 50 trucks have entered Gaza today after the US threatened to take away some military support unless Israel boosted aid within 30 days. It comes as fighting continues in Gaza and Israel also hit Beirut for the first time in 5 days, while Hezbollah has fired more rockets into northern Israel, injuring at least 2 people. Meanwhile, the Prime Minister, Sir Keir Starmer, has said he's looking at sanctioning 2 Israeli cabinet members. Back in the UK, the government is scrambling to find more hotel spaces for migrants after a surge in small boat arrivals. Almost 14,000 have arrived under Labour, overtaking the number of crossings under the previous government in 2024. Meanwhile, Italy has begun sending asylum seekers to Albania under a controversial new plan, with a naval ship arriving on Monday, transferring 16 men from Bangladesh and Egypt. Italy says up to 36,000 asylum seekers could be sent to Albania each year, but only non-vulnerable men from safe countries will qualify. Now, inflation has dropped below the 2% target for the first time over 3 years. Figures for September show it fell to 1.7%, the lowest since April 2021. Analysts had expected a smaller fall to 1.9% and now warn inflation could rise again with higher energy costs on the horizon. The ONS says lower petrol prices and cheaper airfares drove the drop. However, food inflation picked up again, with prices for milk, cheese and eggs rising faster than in August. In other news, the debate on assisted dying is intensifying as new legislation is set to be introduced in Parliament for the first time in nearly a decade. Dame Esther Ranson, who has stage 4 lung cancer, has called for careful legislation, sharing her fears of a painful death and urging the public to write to MPs ahead of the vote. However, the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby, is warning the law could lead to a slippery slope. And finally, Prince William has defended his work trying to tackle homelessness despite his own privileged royal life. In a new ITV documentary, the Prince of Wales is quizzed about critics who might question whether he's the right person to lead the project, which is designed to eradicate homelessness in 6 locations around the UK. Apologies, we will give you that clip in the next hour. Those are the latest GB News headlines. Now it's back to Michelle.
Here I am. I thought I would hide for a brief second there while I just dismounted off the top of a Christmas tree. I have come dressed, of course, like a Christmas fairy. So that's what that was all about. I am Michelle Dewberry and I'm with you until 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, my panel, Baroness Jacqueline Foster, the former member of the European Parliament, and Aaron Bastani, the co-founder of Novara Media. Good evening to both of you.
Evening.
And you know the drill as well, don't you? It's not just about us three. It is about you guys at home as well. What's on your mind tonight? Get in touch with me all the usual ways. You can email me gbviews@gbnews.com. You can go to the website gbnews.com/yoursay, or of course you can tweet or X me. Wherever you're watching or listening, you're very welcome tonight. Now, of course, everyone will be familiar with the very sad news of the very unexpected sad passing of Alex Salmond at the weekend. Now, there's been lots of conversation about how to bring him home, essentially, and whether or not the RAF should have been involved in chartering a flight actually to bring him back. David Davis, actually, the MP, Jacqueline, he was one of the prominent voices that was actually saying the RAF should have done this. Well, they've decided now they're not going to. A private individual has chartered a jet to bring Alex Salmond home. What do you think? Was that the right decision or not?
Well, I don't think it's quite that straightforward because there are certain protocols that RAF aircraft are used for. And I think in this case, actually, the fact he was such a prominent member of the Scottish government and such a big figure, I mean, everyone, I think, really knew who he was. And I actually think he shouldn't have necessarily required a donor to actually fund a flight home for him. But I think the Scottish government, I think, should have stepped in very quickly and perhaps organised something.
What do you think?
I entirely agree. Alex Salmond has been an epochal figure in Scottish politics, and I think it's the place of the Scottish Government and the Scottish Parliament to step in For the rest of the UK taxpayer, I'm not so sure.
Yeah. What do you think about that? I've got to say, when I heard that news, initially of his sad passing, it really did stop me in my tracks. It was so unexpected, and at a very young age as well. Get in touch, let me know your thoughts. But look, it would be rude not to start tonight's programme talking about the House of Lords. I've got Baroness Jacqueline Foster alongside me. You know, we go around in circles about potentially reforming this place, don't we? It seems to come onto the agenda almost like once every kind of calendar year, it feels like, if not more frequently. But look, the conversation now is about abolishing the hereditary peers. There's 92 of them, in case you're wondering. Jacqueline, what do you think to this?
Personally, I think it's a bit like taking a sledgehammer to crack a nut. There have been some reforms over the years, and there are, as we know, around 90 hereditary peers. 60 of them do sit on the Tory benches. About 30 of them are on the cross benches, so they're not affiliated to any party. And then there are 2 on the Labour benches. And I think this was not a priority. I've always said I think reform is fine as long as it improves how the place is run. But I don't see this necessarily improving that. I mean, a lot of the people who are still hereditaries have served this country well. Quite a number of them have been government ministers. It's not as though they're on huge salaries and they've got great offices with loads of staff and all that, because it doesn't work that way. But you also have such a huge amount of expertise in the House of Lords from many, because we're not all from a political background. And it really comes in handy. One of the other key issues is that no single party has a political advantage, which is very important. And even Margaret Thatcher said years ago, it's so frustrating sometimes, even with a big majority in the House of Commons, that you're having to battle to get stuff through the Lords. So I think this is very much, with a number of things with this new Labour government, it's a bit of the sort of politics of envy. And I find it really rather churlish, the way they're handling it. And some of the conversations, actually, when you listen to the way it's being described in the chamber, as though these people, you know, don't deserve to have a job or contribute or whatever it is. So, as I said, I don't want to see an echo chamber of the House of Commons, which is what the Labour agenda is, because then what you will have is a second chamber which will literally be full and stuffed with politicians, which is not the case at this moment in time.
Aaron Bastani, what do you reckon?
Well, I would personally scrap the House of Lords. In my perfect world, if I was the Prime Minister for the day, or maybe if you were the Prime Minister and I was the Chancellor, if I was your number 2, maybe that might be my ask. Michelle, that would be one hell of a strange government. That
would be a very bizarre government. I don't know what had gone on the night before with that, but anyway, carry on.
But you might be surprised to hear that, given that, I do think that some of the reforms under the Blair era weren't necessarily the smartest. You know, I understand the argument for an elected second chamber. I understand the argument for an unelected second chamber, which is comprised of technocrats, highly intelligent people, experienced people, etc. I think we are increasingly moving towards this other strange position where fundamentally the Lords is just a reward for bag carriers, donors, has-beens and could-have-beens. There are also some talented people there. I'm not suggesting otherwise. What I would say is if you do scrap the House of Lords, I think it would be a great infusion of talent for those people to be elsewhere in civil society, in local politics. We need good people in local politics.
What category then putting Jacqueline?
One of the clever people.
Well, I think just
with a real job.
You just said you quite fancied being the Chancellor.
There you go.
The way this is run at the moment, let's be absolutely clear, and this is not doing a poor me. The Lords all share an office. There's 7 in our office.
Yeah.
They're not paid a salary. There is no pension contribution.
Totally.
There's no secretarial allowance, so there's no funded. There is a daily payment to cover accommodation, because not everybody lives in London, which is fine. Nobody's complaining about that. Once you move to an elected chamber, as you say, if you're the cost of actually then doing all of that with the employer pension contributions, all of that will
That's not my position.
I would just say, but you were just mentioning that. You're talking about tenfold on the cost. And would the results be better? I would say no, because what is important, we've got people who've retired who've come from medicine at the top of their game. They may be in their 60s or 70s and they come in. And you just go in and listen to them speak on some of these subjects, whether it's the arts or business or whatever. OK, there'll always be a debate about, are there some there that should not be there? You can have that debate all day long. But the bottom line is there are, you know, several hundred of them, but we know that there are only sort of 300 to 400 cross-party who actually do turn up. Those that don't turn up, I mean, unless you turn up and you are contributing, you don't get the daily allowance. But that will be very different if you move to an all-elected. And it will just be, as I said, an echo chamber then of whoever really is in the House of Commons. And then who's going to stand in it? I mean, where are the constituencies going to be? Is it going to be the same ward? Are there going to be 2 MPs? Will it be a list system? So, as I said, I've no problem about reform of the House of Lords, but only reform it if it's going to actually improve the scrutiny that will be on the House of Commons, which ultimately, quite rightly, has the final say.
What do you think of some of those points?
Well, Norway has one chamber. And Norway seems to be a pretty well-run country. It's quite wealthy, it's quite prosperous, it seems to be doing OK for itself.
It is.
So I don't see why we couldn't have a single chamber. I think the arguments around an elected second chamber, I think I'd broadly agree with those, and that's why I think it's not really necessary.
Well, then,
I would have one chamber.
Yeah, but then what we also will do is, we've got 26 bishops. The Labour government haven't mentioned them. How are they appointed? We have got...
Do you think they should be there?
Well, that's for debate.
No, I'm asking you. What do you think?
The head of we have a constitutional monarch who is hereditary, is the king.
Yeah, but do you think those bishops should be there?
Opens Parliament.
Do you think those bishops should be there?
I've no issue with bishops. The question is whether the bishops should actually vote, be allowed to vote, because they obviously do vote. So, I mean, of course, I've been to many other parliaments around the world. Obviously, when I was an MEP and I was in a different parliament there. And just because one country does it one way doesn't always make it right. There are reasons sometimes why we have a strong constitutional monarchy. The monarch does not get involved with the political system as such, but what they are is a brake on anybody, I suspect, being elected that could cause danger to this country.
One of my viewers, Aaron, he's got in touch, Andy is called, and said, why does any 21st century country have a system of medieval elitism at its heart? He suggests that exactly that is what is going on, and he reckons that every single peer should be forced, essentially, to explain what have they done to deserve a job for life.
I quite like that idea. What's his name?
Andy.
Andy, I quite like that idea. Maybe we'd have a commission of sort of 20 commoners like us, the regular people.
Well, I'm a regular person.
That's what 20 commoners.
Born in Huyton, born in Liverpool.
20 people, just, chosen at random, and it could be like Dragon's Den. We could have all the peers, and they would have to explain their accomplishments and why they should stay there. That'd be quite amusing.
What do you reckon, Andy? Is that the system that you want? Would you be putting yourself up there? Would you be getting involved in making the decisions about who should be there and who should not be there? All of your thoughts very welcome tonight. Look, inflation, it's finally fallen below the Bank of England's target. That's some good news. Immigration apparently going down, so things seem to be turning a corner. I've got a few questions for you. Rishi Sunak, was he wrong then to call this election in July? And also, why is everything then so seemingly doom and gloom when it comes to the budget? Your thoughts?
Conservative MPs have finally chosen their top 2 for the leadership. And now, it's over to the members. Join me, Christopher Hope, tomorrow as Kevin Badenoch and Robert Jenrick are quizzed by Conservative Party members and myself at our GB News leadership event.
And afterwards, join me, Patrick Christys, with a live studio audience and a star panel as we discuss what it means for the Conservative Party and what it means for you. Decision time, the race to lead, from 7 p.m. tomorrow, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Sir Jacob Rees-Mogg's State of the Nation, Monday to Thursday from 8 p.m.
You must be so proud of your daughter being so just amazingly brave and a model for other people who face illness.
I think we're proud of her all day, every day, and always have been. Liz has always given her all to anything she put her mind to, whether that was studying for her GCSE exams at school or whether it's been her photography and battling cancer. Liz never does anything by house, and we are so incredibly proud of her each and every day.
And Liz, I noticed a wonderful line from you saying that when you've got cancer, A-levels don't matter so much. That seems to me to be a very reasonable view to take and has given you then the chance to do these other amazing things that you will be doing more of in future with the London Ambulance Service. And I imagine many people will want to help you with your bucket list because they've now seen you and seen how brave you are.
Yeah, I mean, hopefully we've already been overwhelmed by the responses and the support by so many people. I think when my mum originally posted the list, it received like 4,000 replies. It was insane, and still there's more. So from the bottom of our hearts, and especially mine, we just want to say thank you, because there's nothing that forces anyone to get in touch and say, hey, I have something you can do, pop over and do this or that, or it's just out of the generosity of their hearts. So thank you.
GB News, the People's Channel. Weekdays on GB News. Wake up to breakfast every day from 6 a.m. Followed by Britain's newsroom at 9:30. At noon, it's Good Afternoon Britain. Followed by Martin Daubney from 3 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, keeping you company till 7 o'clock. Baroness Jacqueline Foster alongside me, as is Aaron Bastani. We were just talking about reforming the House of Lords. One of the things that I would do literally overnight is, why is it a job for life? I would do a fixed term, I don't know, 5 years, 10 years, whatever, take your pick, but a job for life, really? I find that a little bit obscene, actually, no offence to the Baroness alongside me. I think that should not be a thing in this day and age. Anyway, look, let's talk optimistically, shall we? Because inflation, we've had a lot of talk about these levels, haven't we? Well, they've finally now dropped to below the 2% target, its lowest level, by the way, since 2021. Of course, though, we've got all the doom and gloom, haven't we? Because we've got this budget coming up, lots of focus about some of the things that's in there. I'll come back to the budget in just a second. But let me ask you this. It feels like we've turned a corner to some people. Do you think now, on reflection, Rishi Sunak was absolutely bananas to have called that election in July?
Absolutely.
What was he thinking?
I have no idea. I think most of us had thought that the best time would be around October, November, which was fine, because I think the expiry date was sort of January next year when you're looking at the full term. We were surprised as anybody. And I think what's so frustrating is what you're seeing today, i.e. the inflation figures coming down, and the fact that the economy has turned a corner. I mean, that was due actually to the measures that we had taken, and also that the energy markets have sort of started to calm down, obviously with the issue with Ukraine and internationally. And of course, here we are now. We have another government. They're talking the economy down, which is appalling. We've got no idea what's going to come up in the budget. And so...
Not for a want of speculation, though, is it? One of the things that have been speculated about a lot is this whole national insurance rise on the side of the employers now.
Yeah.
A lot of argument about whether or not that would be the right thing to do if it happens. What do you think?
Well, so just for people who aren't necessarily familiar with what the plan may be, we could see employers having to pay national insurance contributions on pension contributions. The maximum of that could be 13.8%. I suspect it will happen, but not at that level. The modelling on this at the moment suggests that if that was to be implemented at 13.8%, which, like I said, I don't think is likely, it would add about 1 to 2% with regards to payroll. Now, of course, if you're a business operating with very small margins, that's quite a lot.
It is.
However, given that inflation's coming down, interest rates are likely to receive a few more cuts, it probably isn't so bad as it might sound, because the rest of the economic picture is a lot better, as Jacqueline said. Just quickly on the economy, interest rates have been cut already. We're going to get a second cut this year, maybe a third. We'll certainly get another one early next year. Growth has been revised up from 0.1% to 1%. So you have more tax receipts, of course. We'll almost certainly have lower immigration this year because of the changes with regards to student visas. Rwanda would have been implemented, and whether or not that was working, whether or not you agree or disagree with it, there would have been flights happening. So I cannot get my head around it. The only reason why I think they called it when they did was maybe there was internal polling which just said, look, if we don't go for this soon, reform is coming for our lunch.
Yeah, and I thought, I'm sure I heard rumours or something that it was Andrew Bailey, the Bank of England. I thought he'd advised, well, you might know, advised Rishi Sunak that actually inflation looks set to rise in the autumn. I don't know if that was one of the mindsets.
Well, I have no idea, but what I do know is that the Labour Party came out with a manifesto. They said it was fully costed. They were elected. They said there would be no increase on national insurance, no increase on income tax, no increase on other things. And within 10 minutes of being elected, we've got...
No, hold on, just to be clear, I need to be accurate. What they said was there were going to be no tax rises on what they directly said working people. And then when they had to clarify what they meant, then they were then saying national insurance, income tax,
we were challenging what they were saying, Michelle. So the first thing they do is they take 10 million pensioners out of the winter fuel payment allowance.
Yeah.
They then take the private schools, which aren't all subscribed by, very rich parents. They then throw 20% VAT at private schools, notwithstanding that the United Nations have always said that no country should tax education. So there's that. Then, obviously, as you say, you've got the national insurance issue. It's all about smoke and mirrors. And they were adamant that there'd be no increase. And it's not easy, it's not right to say that there's not going to be much of an impact, because the employer's national insurance is twice as much as the employees. 83% of businesses in the United Kingdom are small and medium-sized businesses. So we're not talking about the great big businesses like oil companies or big manufacturers or Marks and Spencers here. We're talking about the engine room of industry and business and job creation in the United Kingdom. So what they're saying is actually an oxymoron, because his whole raison d'etre is talking about growth. If you start then taxing these putting up national insurance on the employers, often small businesses with 2 or 3 people who are trying to create the jobs for the engine room, then what you're doing is actually countering what they're actually trying to do. So I think it's absolutely appalling, frankly.
So no, that's true. And the costs of employing people have gone up significantly in recent years, of course, rising minimum wage in line with inflation, rising energy costs, and now this. So employers are being hit with a fair few things, it's fair to say. However, last year the deficit was £120 billion. OK, £120 billion is a lot of money. Now, one of the major problems is that post-pandemic, the interest that we're paying on our national debt is significantly higher than it was 4 or 5 years ago. It's about tens of billions of pounds now that we're paying in interest. And if we don't get on top of this, we have an ageing population. We've got higher interest rates, generally speaking, with regards to our government debt that we're selling on international debt markets. We are going to be in deep trouble. Now, Britain has many structural problems: expensive energy, expensive housing, low productivity, very poor infrastructure. If Labour can get on top of one of those things, I think, frankly, it will be a minor miracle. And I think, honestly, I think both parties are a shambles. I think that both parties, frankly, went into this election lying to the electorate, misleading the electorate. That's not just my view, by the way. The IFS agrees on that, the Institute of Fiscal Studies.
Well, I don't care what they've said. We didn't go in lying. We went in, we'd been in power a long time. I'm not sitting here and saying that we expected to win.
No, but...
this is politics. But the Labour Party has had 14 years to practice. After 14 years of having an opportunity to come into power and with a great big majority, I mean, their manifesto is absolutely awful.
Hash of it there.
The deficit, look, George Osborne became the Chancellor in 2010.
National insurance on employees is not going to deal with the deficit.
Well, George Osborne came into number 11 Downing Street as the Chancellor of the Exchequer in 2010, and he said, I will get rid of the deficit and we'll get on top of the public debt. The public debt in 2010 was...
That's 14 years ago.
The public debt in 2010 was 60% of GDP. Today it's 100% of GDP, and last year the deficit was £120 billion. That is all extremely bad.
No,
and, you know, look...
Talking about the debt as a distraction...
Give Labour a chance. I don't like Istanbul.
We're talking about the hard work, we're talking about working people and what's directly affecting them. Of course the debt is an issue. And we spent £500 billion or whatever else with COVID and everything else that went with that. Of course we know that. But what we're talking about here, what affects the daily person going to work, and they're going to pay a mortgage, they're going to pay the rent, and they're going to be looking at their, obviously, their wages and everything else. And it's the decisions that this government have to make sure that we've got the growth and make sure that
Well,
that
you're the
people are
average
better
people.
off.
You're the
And what
average
they're saying
people
so
at
far,
home.
showing so far, is really, I am not convinced at all.
Well, you're the average people at home, so what do you make to it all? Whose side of that conversation are you on? Lots to discuss with you after the break. Migrant hotels, apparently they was going to be reduced. Doesn't seem to be the case. I also want to talk to you as well about catcalling. If you're doing that, should you have your car seized? You heard me right. I'll see you in 2.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Still some pretty heavy rain around at the moment, but for many, tomorrow's going to be a fine day. We'll see some sunny spells, not as humid as today, but still pretty mild. Low pressures nearby. These weather fronts just dangling across the country have been producing pulses of heavy rain through the day. Still working northwards at the moment, especially wet over parts of northern England. Met Office yellow warning in place here, but staying pretty soggy over eastern Scotland. Rain moving across eastern England and out into the North Sea, and many western areas actually becoming dry overnight. It's not going to turn chilly though. Temperatures holding up in double digits. Many towns and cities staying in the teens. A drab start then early doors over eastern England, and a pretty wet start across parts of Scotland, particularly across the north. This rain slowly clearing away though through the morning. Actually, for rush hour through the central belt, it may well be drying up. Certainly elsewhere, many places having a dry morning rush hour. A lot of cloud initially over these eastern areas, but clearing away, and elsewhere we'll see some clearer skies coming through. Just maybe 1 or 2 scattered showers for Wales and southwest England, and as we go through the day we'll see a few more of those here and perhaps for Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. The rain over northern Scotland, that continues to move away, and for many it's a dry and a bright day tomorrow. Some pleasant autumn sunshine. Turning a bit breezy in the west as a few more showers come in through the afternoon, but most relatively light winds and still pretty warm. Not as humid as today, but these temperatures still well above the average for the time of year, mid to high teens. Friday will start a little cooler with some mist and fog maybe in places, but generally another dry day across the east. Increasingly cloudy further west with some wet and very windy weather in the northwest, and with high tides that could cause some problems. So there's a Met Office yellow warning in place for that, and the potential for more wet and windy weather into the weekend. So do keep up to date with the forecast. Bye for now.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. Problems in West Yorkshire on the M62. The westbound exit remains closed at junction 26, the M606 chain bar interchange south of Bradford for emergency repair works. On the M5 in Gloucestershire, the outside lane closed both ways, junction 13 to 12 north of Stroud for emergency barrier repairs, with long queues along the A38 as you divert. North of Bridgend, the westbound carriageway of the M4 remains shut at junction 36 following an accident. The M3 is closed into London from the M25 following a serious crash. And the M20 in Kent is queuing coastbound towards the M26 following an earlier collision, with 2 lanes closed on the M2 coastbound from junction 2 at Stroud to 3 at Chatham for emergency repairs. Finally, long delays on the M27 eastbound in Hampshire. 1 lane's closed just after junction 5 for Southampton Airport tell-off, where a lorry's broken down. That's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
Hello there, this is Dewbs & Co with me, Michelle Dewberry. Still to come tonight, get this, an inquest has found that multiple failings led to a migrant taking his own life. Cue lots of people saying that we are essentially inhumane with our treatment of migrants. Are we? You tell me. Also, Scotland, get this, apparently could be considering visas for migrant workers. Home Office, though, says that that isn't going to happen. What's going on there as well? And last but not least, if you are in your car and you catcall a woman out your window, I don't know if you do, I'm not judging, but look, if you do, should you have your car seized? That is what has been going on. All of that coming up tonight, and alongside me, my panel, Jacqueline Foster and Aaron Bastani remain. I love you guys. You're talking away on the website. Dave the Rave is conducting a very important poll as I speak, saying the important question tonight is salad cream or mayonnaise on salad. That's a no-brainer. It's salad cream, obviously, Dave. Lots of people are in massive favour as well in terms of reforming the House of Lords. And yes, I've got to say, many people not happy with the pessimism, shall we say, about the budget, and also lots of people questioning the validity of this £22 billion black hole that keeps getting talked about. That's got an ooh from Jacqueline.
It's 50 now.
Oh, it's 50 now. She's shaking her head. Oh, it's all going to kick off. What's the matter with you? Very quickly on this
no, it's
black
a
hole.
fictitious black hole. It was. They tried to say that the Chancellor had concealed 22 billion, like he'd put it down the back of the sofa. They've used it as an excuse. It was merely a forecast by the OBR. And Rachel Reeves, as the Chancellor, didn't even do what most upcoming chancellors will do before the election. She didn't even go and check the books of the Treasury. And yet she said she'd checked everything. So it's absolute nonsense. I raised it in the House of Lords last week. It's on my Twitter feed.
Is it?
And, yeah, he only came up, the minister, with... he came up with 9 billion. And I said, I don't know, maybe the rest of us at the 13 billion. And I think it's a distraction. And I think they're
well, you're
pulling the wool.
determined to get to the bottom of it, aren't you, Jackie?
I am.
Doing
I am
God's work in the House of Lords there. Aaron, what's the matter? What are you saying?
Well, the black hole's even bigger. It's 120 billion if you're looking at the deficit.
We
heard... Well, it just keeps... Inflation's still with us. Look, we heard in 2010, you know, the deficit, we have to get rid of the deficit. But now, a 120 billion pound deficit, apparently that's no longer a big deal. OK.
Well, you will have the final say on that. In your own living rooms, tell me what you reckon to it. But look, this is a very odd story, this one. The Home Office, apparently, they've been rumoured to be planning to set up a scheme that would help boost immigration north of the border, a separate visa system, if you will. This is all very odd. This it comes from a Labour MP. The Home Office then very quickly came out and said, no, that's not true. I mean, not really sure that if the government denies something is going to happen, that's always going to be the case. But what do you think to this? Do we need a separate migration scheme in Scotland?
Well, I think the Home Office have got enough problems trying to sort out the migration issues across the United Kingdom, frankly, as a centralised body. I'm not sure who... Somebody apparently came up with this. But, you know, we don't have hard borders across this nation. And why would you have a different scheme? I mean, who's supposed to be... We've got problems already, I think, with the amount of people who are issued with visas or allowed to remain. I mean, there's shocking problems. So I think, actually, it should be a non-story. And I think the Home Office need to get its act together. And I think this new government should too, and get things sorted out, frankly.
Aaron?
So, in theory, I like the idea that you can have different migration policies in different places with different needs. So, for instance, in certain parts of the country, there won't be much consent for migration. They don't want people to migrate there. They might not have the need for migrants there. In other parts of the country, there might be consent and there might be need. On the other hand, as Jacqueline's already said, we're one country. So I don't really know how you enforce this between England and Scotland unless you have a hard border. You could have some kind of Chinese-style app where, you know, you're monitoring people in real time. But
can you imagine? Don't put ideas in people's head, Aaron.
A, that would be highly authoritarian. But B, I just don't think that the Home Office would be capable of managing that properly. No. But as Jacqueline said, I think it's department.
If you get a visa up in Scotland, hop in a car, hop on the train and come across the border.
That's the criticism, right?
Oh, it's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense.
Well, let's see what happens then, shall we? We'll keep an eye on that story. But look, talking about migration as well, I've got to say, an inquest now has found that, I quote, multiple failings at an immigration detention centre has led to a Colombian migrant taking his life in 2023. Lots of people now saying, Jacqueline, that our whole kind of system, the way we're treating people, is inhumane and so on and so forth. Is it?
No, it's not. And if people want to cross the channel and go and look at some of the other European countries, I mean, if you're in France, I mean, God knows the Calais is absolute shambles. It's like a jungle. And you've only got to walk through the suburbs, les banlieues, as they say in Paris. And for years, people have been in tents. I mean, the thing is, London's looking a bit like this with Sadiq Khan when you look at Park Lane, which is absolutely atrocious. But the vast majority of people who are here are given accommodation. We're spending billions and billions a year to make sure that they're staying in decent accommodation, while at the same time, you know, we have pensioners who can barely heat their houses. So I think it's very sad that somebody has taken their own life, and I think obviously you have to look into these issues. But what about the hundreds who've died and drowned in the Channel? You know, there is a legal way to come into this country, and when thousands of people do it, then, you know, you can't keep encouraging people who are illegal to come here. They're taking the risk, and then clearly we have the consequences of that.
Aaron Bastani?
So this facility was overseen by an outsourcing company called Mighty. And I think with prisons or with facilities like this, they should at the very least be administered by the state. There should be a certain level of quality control going on because, frankly, I just don't trust these companies, Serco, Sodexo.
No, there is. They're contracted. They have oversight. They have oversight. The government can't provide all of that accommodation. You then say, well, the
it
government...
is paying for it. It's paying Mighty to do it.
No, but you'd then be saying that the government should be running the hotels that some migrants...
No. I think if you're arbitrarily detaining somebody, which in the case of prisons, some people do have to go to prison, for instance, I just think that should be administered by Her Majesty's government, His Majesty's government and the state.
It is being administered. They come under rules and regulations.
It was Mickey Mouse companies.
But well, you say that. I mean, have you spoken to them?
Yeah, no, I've spoken
at length. Had a conversation with them?
I remember covering a story of Jimmy Mabenga, who was deported, and he was escorted onto a flight by Serco employees, and he died. And they were incredibly just stupid in how they conducted themselves. And I think if a police officer had ever done that, I think that it would have fallen very far short of the kind of professionalism we demand of those kinds of people.
You need to be careful just picking odd things out here, because then you can
Well, this is an odd thing. That's the point, right? We should have standards in this country.
Hold on, because I can bring a specific example to this, just to kind of back up, if you like, some of the stuff that Aaron's saying, because you've got all these companies and you're saying about outsourcing and all the rest of it, but it's an abject failure in the way that actually the Home Office has been managing some of these contracts. So there was an investigation done by Open Democracy, for example, back in July, that basically is saying that the government has failed to monitor the private firms adequately that have been handed out billions of pounds of contracts to manage the asylum system. They reckon companies like Serco, Clay Springs, etc., they've got 100,000 asylum seekers in government accommodation or thereabouts. And what their Open Democracy was claiming is that the oversight that the Home Office of the government was placing on those companies and the centralisation of it was massively lacking. That, I would say, is a cause for concern.
Then the government, where I would agree, is then the government should be ensuring that the oversight is good.
Yeah, but they're not.
But we're talking about odd cases here out of hundreds and hundreds of thousands of people. And we do, going back to the beginning, we do actually provide good accommodation and backup and services, whether it's, the health service, education service for people coming here. And so I think we just need to be, a bit thoughtful about what we say. Because people are treated, actually, generally very well.
One of the things that I think is really quite wrong is that companies like Serco, they parachute into different towns and cities, hire out a hall, and they create these events for people, landlords or prospective landlords. And what they do is they offer these people these very lucrative, financially appealing contracts to let their properties to Serco for the placement of asylum seekers. And what you've got now, I've seen it all the time on TikTok, you've got this springing up now of these young people that are all over TikTok telling people, this is how you do it. You buy these houses, these cheap houses up north, and then you get these contracts with Serco and so on and so forth. And I actually think it's absolutely wrong, because you've got all these people piling onto this bandwagon to enrich themselves with not a single modicum of thought to how those communities are going to be affected by the mass placing of people, often who you don't even really know who they are, in these neighbourhoods, also that these new landlords can make a buck or two.
But don't forget, it's the Home Office that determines where they're going to go. Obviously, they're contracting companies. It's the Home Office that makes the decisions where they're going to have a hostel and various things like that. So they have to take the responsibility for that. But it is, we've had some shocking problems, I mean, they need to get a grip. We need to get a grip of how this is being dealt with.
Jacqueline, people will be shouting at the screens, no offence, saying that your party had about 14 years to get a grip of it and you didn't.
Yeah.
So...
Oh, I don't disagree.
I would say, key in the case of this gentleman is he was saying, I want to go back to Colombia. I will go back to Colombia. And we were keeping him here, and it was costing the taxpayer money. And I just think, surely, if this was being administered properly, that would have been resolved.
And
I'd also say quickly on your point about, people piling in to buy these properties in places like the north and whatnot, with HMOs, I saw where I live in Portsmouth, which, by the way, has a licensing system. Some parts of Bolton, for instance, I think, has a licensing system. Anybody can build an HMO anywhere.
Yeah, and this is the thing, it's HMOs, so that's what these people are doing. Yeah. They're buying up these cheap northern properties and so on and so forth. Yeah. They're transforming them like a 2 or 3 bed semi, stripping out the living rooms and all the rest of it, sticking as many bedrooms as they can possibly get into these places, and then that's what you now live next door to.
So I know a building where I live.
They've been doing that for years.
Yeah, of course, but there's a place where I live.
This is before all of this came on, and we know some of these landlords were doing that, and the council were actually paying the rents for people.
Yeah.
Well, I think those people should be named and shamed, actually, and made to explain why are you not putting a care in the world for the communities, the streets and the neighbours who are living alongside these people that you're desperately trying to profit off. Anyway, don't even get me started. Last point to you, finally.
Yeah, so there's a property I saw near where we live, and it was an end of terrace. So it's end of terrace, but it's still a terraced house. 12 bedrooms. 12 bedrooms. Let's say half of those people have a partner. That's 18 people in a terraced house.
But why? Right, no offence, but who wants to live next door? So you buy this house. That's like a family set of terrace houses. All of a sudden, you have whatever you've just said then, 12, 18 people, whoever these people are is irrelevant, crammed into the house next door. Am I like losing my marbles?
No,
is this the dream for people or not?
You get villages and they'll build a hostel and there'll be 60 young men between 18 and 34. I mean,
this world.
And the pressures that come with that.
This world.
It's very, very concerning.
And by the way, there's rumours afoot. Don't forget the Labour Party. They was talking about closing asylum hotels. Well, now, obviously, there's conversations abound that these things are about to reopen.
Well, Yvette Cooper was standing there with a placard saying all migrants welcome. So,
dear me. You know what? Maybe you're watching, you're chanting at your screens going, all migrants definitely are welcome. Well, your views are welcome too. Get in touch with me. All the usual ways. Look, lots more I need to talk to you about. If you are a fella that thinks it's OK to wind your window down and catcall women, what they've been doing now in Bradford is sending undercover female officers out to be joggers and then seizing the cars of the fellas that have been doing the catcalling. What do you think to that? See you in 2.
Martin Daubney, weekdays from 3 p.m.
Please tell me that we're British. In our darkest hour, we can work around this. The beer will still be flowing at Christmas. Tell me, please.
Martin, without using bad language, there's no words to describe that this is another major blow to the hospitality sector. I wake up every day with anxiety thinking, what's going to happen to us now? Oh, my God, now the weather's against us. Not only are the government absolutely battering us, then the weather's now hitting us as well.
Kate Stewart, this can only mean one thing. Prices, once again, going through the roof.
And there's nothing we can do. We have on costs. We have to buy from the brewery. We have the VAT. We have then the VAT, what we take. It is an absolute nightmare. To be in the pub game now, Martin, is very, very difficult. And there's no light at the end of the tunnel. Everything just keeps hammering us from every different direction. And obviously, we have to pass that on to the customers, then price increases. There's nothing we can do. We don't want to sell beer at an inflated price. We want it as cheap as possible to get people through them doors. But we have no option. They're going to go up again in the new budget. You know, there's no help for us. What are we supposed to do, Martin, except the only option is to close the doors and say, enough is enough. We can't do this anymore. I absolutely cry my eyes out having to put the prices up because you think, oh, my God, people are just going to turn away and walk. But we can't swallow the costs all the time, Martin. It's impossible for us to do because we will go bankrupt. There has to be, there's inflation getting hammered on us yet again, and we have to pass it on. I feel it when I take my children out for something to eat. You're like, wow, that has just cost a fortune. But what is the answer? The answer is the government needs to look at saving the hospitality sector and stop being so greedy in everything that they take away from us, or there won't be pubs.
GB News, the People's Channel.
Welcome to State of the Nation, daily plunge into the stories shaping our country. I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, and Monday to Thursday we bring you the insights, the facts, the truth about how our country is being governed. Because what happens in Downing Street matters down your street. Tune in to State of the Nation every Monday to Thursday, 8 to 9 o'clock. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's Patrick Christie's Tonight, and here we do things differently. It's explaining the absolute madness of this, doesn't it? It's explosive. I mean, this is very good. It's lively.
850. Your government sat there, Sean, and it did nothing.
It's controversial. And the Middle East has been in turmoil since before I was born. It's everything you need to kickstart your evening. Everyone's had their Weetabix tonight. I love to see it. That's Patrick Christie's Tonight, weeknights from 9 p.m. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello. Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm with you till 7 o'clock tonight. Baroness Jacqueline Foster alongside me, as is Aaron Bastani. One of my viewers, Mark, says, can you tell Aaron is talking rubbish? People
Not the
can't
first
just...
time.
I know, people can't just buy terraced houses and put 30 people in them. What are you talking about?
Well, I'm happy to share the link. I've already shared it on X. It was a story in a local newspaper, and they showed the planning permission, etc. It was 12 units.
And Ian says, hang on a minute, Michelle, why are you getting so upset about people buying cheap houses and renting them out? It's called capitalism. Surely you would support that. You're a capitalist. Yes, I am a capitalist, but I am a responsible capitalist. And actually, I think that these contracts are very financially lucrative. I said that right at the start. But surely people have got to have a bit of a conscience about what you're doing and the ways you make your money. No? Am I just being a bit old-fashioned? Look, this is a little bit of a... Shall I say depressing? I don't know. The assisted dying bill, look, that is being brought before the Commons. Very briefly, your thoughts on this. Do you think the UK should have assisted dying or not?
This is a hot potato.
Why is it?
The most positive thing is because it's an issue of conscience, then the members of Parliament will have a free vote. So it's not going to be divided on party lines. This is going to be about what individuals think.
Do you think we should have it?
I think there is a case for people who are compos mentis, who at a stage in their life make a decision or are able to make a decision to end it because they've got some horrendous terminal illness. And then there are all the safeguards that need to be brought in. Other countries, some of them do it very successfully. I think it was a lot easier probably 40 or 50 years ago in this country. Far fewer people died in hospital. I think GPs helped people at times along the way, when you know if you had very elderly relatives. And as I said, it's I'll be interested to see actually how the sort of bill is constructed and see where we go from there.
Aaron?
So I think we could do well to imitate the Swiss. They've assisted dying. I think the legislation in places like Canada is appalling, actually.
Yeah.
I think that we've legalised suicide. It's been decriminalised in this country since the 60s. So I think it's perfectly coherent to say, well, assisted suicide is also permissible. I think it's outrageous that the maximum sentence for somebody helping a loved one to end their lives is 15 years. You know, if I said to my wife, I had some sort of condition, I said, please, I need to end my life, and she helped me, she would be facing up to 15 years in prison. I find that outrageous.
Yeah, but that
obviously
really happens. But they rarely get.
Of course, but I think just on paper, it's very silly legislation.
Yeah. And I think, as we, Jacqueline, opened up with there, I think it's a very emotional issue, isn't it? And it really does divide people. Look, lots of you getting in touch. The main thing you're talking to me about tonight is catcalling. I've had so many emails on this topic, I can't even tell you. The reason I'm asking you about it is because in West Yorkshire, everybody, police there, they're sending out undercover female officers to go out and pose as joggers. What they're trying to do there is essentially crack down on what they're calling sexual harassment when men are catcalling these joggers. And there's been cases now where the cars of these fellas have been seized. You're a man, not suggesting you're a catcaller, but do you think this is the direction of travel we need to be going in?
Yes. I think it's a great idea. And look, you only need to do this sparingly, and it creates disincentives for people to do it. So you don't need to be constantly out there. The fact that in your local press, in local Facebook groups, people will be talking about the story, blokes think twice.
So do you think those people should be named and shamed as well? Here's the guy that was doing it.
Yeah,
or is that a step too far?
Maybe it's a step too far, because maybe they're not saying something completely outrageous. You know, it might just be like, you're right, darling, or whatever. But I think, you know...
Is that catcalling, if someone says, you're all right, darling?
Well, it depends how you say it, doesn't it? But look, I think that there should be... I think we need to bring back civility. I think that's true whether it's people playing their phones on the train or the bus. I hate that so much. But I think catcalling's another one.
Well, I can tell you, right, you guys at home are really, really divided on this topic, and you really are getting in touch thick and fast. Michelle, I'm against, this is Ross, I'm against catcalling, but to put women police officers out there to encourage, you're saying,
I think they're running in hot pants or something.
To catcall, you're saying it's entrapment, and they shouldn't be that shouldn't be allowed. One of my viewers has got in touch, Yorkie, saying, Michelle, a friend and I decided to go running in the evening to get fit. We ran up the road and around the block, and she says it was awful and scary. Virtually every single car that drove past, men wound down their windows and were shouting obscenities at us. David says, Michelle, according to most of the middle-aged women I know, the only thing worse than being catcalled is not being catcalled at all. Jacqueline Foster.
Well, I'd sort of I am an older person, an older woman. I think that you can see the difference whether somebody is doing something light-hearted. I mean, we used to go past the building sites and I'd sort of think to myself, you know, if there was an odd whistle from the guys on the building site, you know, I was very flattered. And then I started to worry when they didn't whistle anymore. So that's on the lighter side of it. I think you've got to differentiate between some weird guy who's going to be sort of stalking some insane obscenities, actually, to young women. And somebody who is maybe in an odd way just paying a compliment. And we're not all victims. You know, when we get some of these subjects sometimes, it's they're all women, and we can't actually look after ourselves. We can't respond. We have great throwaway lines as well. But in terms of the police and the entrapment issue, if you put the entrapment issue at the side, have they not got anything better to do for their female police officers than be running around and jogging, trying to see if somebody is going to say something to them out the window of a car? I think it's actually ridiculous. We've got huge levels of knife crime. We've got women being stalked. We've got all sorts of other things going on, families needing support. So to actually use police in this way, I just think is ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
Well, this is an initiative called Jog On, apparently. There's been 6 operations since March to try and catch these men, and they've said that it's clear that some of these men don't even think that behaviour counts as harassment. Why did you make that noise?
Yeah, it's men are blokes sometimes.
What does that mean?
Well, because the thing is, you know, you can't govern everybody's behaviour. You can't micromanage. I mean, people say odd things.
Civility, isn't it?
No, but people say odd things sometimes. They don't mean anything bad by it.
I think
it's not civil. People were more civil when I was a girl. When I was young, people opened the door and we did all of these sorts of things.
Yeah. And I think this stuff's probably gotten worse, hasn't it?
No, I don't. You see, I don't actually believe it is. I use the tube a lot. I walk a lot. I take the dog out a lot. You know, I've got lots of friends with young, teenage daughters or daughters in their 20s. What we were brought up to do was look after ourselves.
I think the
make sure that make sure your daughter, make sure that they're in the right place, make sure that they're not going to go somewhere on their own when it's dark. Stay with your friends. Do all of these.
I think young women are far more sexualised by strange men now than they were even when I was a child, because of a bunch of things which we don't need to talk about. But that's just my view.
What do you mean? What do you mean?
Pornography, OnlyFans, social media. I think there's a significant minority of men who look at women in a particular way, which simply, if you behaved like that 50, 60 years ago, you would have got a clip round the ear from your dad or your brother or your sister or your mum.
But they always did. And what we would find is then the other chaps, the other guys who were in the group, they would very often, we used to obviously have the odd creepy one, and they would then, that is why our mothers said to us, when you're out and you're about, you make sure you're with your friends and you're not exposed as a single person on your own. But no, there's always been creeps. There always will be creeps. I'm very happy if somebody does something bad to make sure that they are, whipped into jail. But no, we're talking about police, what the police are actually doing. Of course, children need to be brought up well, and mothers and fathers need to tell their boys to make sure that they are treating their
apparently
girls
60% of women say that they feel intimidated when they go out and go for a run. Are you a jogger, a female jogger? This is from Runners World, apparently. 60% of female runners have experienced harassment, mainly from men in cars.
Well, how many did they ask? What was the poll? Was it 100 women? Was it 2,000 women?
I don't know. Get in touch with Runners World.
This is the thing. I'm always a little bit cautious about some of these polls.
Well, there you go. You will have strong opinions on that. Are you a fella? Do you think this is all a bit harsh? Are you a woman? Do you get intimidated by some of this stuff? Do you think it's all a bit nonsense or what? You can ponder that tonight. But for now, that's all from us. Thanks, Aaron. Thank you, Jacqueline Foster. And thank you to each and every one of you at home. I very much enjoyed your company tonight. Thank you. But I'll be back tomorrow. Night.
We'll see a cold snap, which will quickly develop into a warm front. Boxed Boiler Repairs, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good evening. Welcome to your latest weather update from the Met Office here on GB News. Still some pretty heavy rain around at the moment, but for many, tomorrow's going to be a fine day. We'll see some sunny spells, not as humid as today, but still pretty mild. Low pressures nearby. These weather fronts just dangling across the country have been producing pulses of heavy rain through the day. Still working northwards at the moment, especially wet over parts of northern England. Met Office yellow warning in place here, but staying pretty soggy over eastern Scotland. Rain moving across eastern England and out into the North Sea, and many western areas actually becoming dry overnight. It's not going to turn chilly though, temperatures holding up in double digits, many towns and cities staying in the teens. A drab start then early doors over eastern England, and a pretty wet start across parts of Scotland, particularly across the north. This rain slowly clearing away though through the morning. Actually, for rush hour through the central belt, it may well be drying up. Certainly elsewhere, many places having a dry morning rush hour. A lot of cloud initially over these eastern areas, but clearing away, and elsewhere we'll see some clearer skies coming through. Just maybe one or two scattered showers for Wales and southwest England, and as we go through the day, we'll see a few more of those here and perhaps for Northern Ireland and southwest Scotland. The rain over northern Scotland, that continues to move away, and for many it's a dry and a bright day tomorrow. Some pleasant autumn sunshine, turning a bit breezy in the west as a few more showers come in through the afternoon, but most relatively light winds and still pretty warm. Not as humid as today, but these temperatures still well above the average for the time of year, mid to high teens. Friday will start a little cooler with some mist and fog maybe in places, but generally another dry day across the east. Increasingly cloudy further west with some wet and very windy weather in the northwest, and with high tides that could cause some problems. So there's a Met Office yellow warning in place for that, and the potential for more wet and windy weather into the weekend. So do keep up to date with the forecast. Bye for now.
A nice bright morning will generate a lovely warm day, right through to the evening. Boxed Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
The latest GB News travel.
Good evening, I'm Johnny Ratner. On the M62 in West Yorkshire, the westbound exit remains closed to junction 26, the M606, the chain bar interchange for emergency repairs. Long delays heading towards London on the M3, from the M25 interchange up to junction 1, the A308, the Sunbury Staines exit. Recovery works underway following an accident. The M4 is crawling heading west to junction 36, Norfolk Bridge End. After an earlier collision closed the motorway, all restrictions have now been lifted. And on the M27 in Hampshire, the inside lane of 4 closed eastbound just after the Southampton Airport turn up junction 5, where a lorry's broken down. Long queues back along the M271 towards Southampton, towards the Redbridge flyover. And there are severe delays on the Elizabeth line west of London Paddington following signalling problems at Southall. And that's the latest.
You can stay up to date throughout the day by visiting our website, gbnews.com.
There's only 2 weeks remaining to grab your chance to win a whopping £36,000 cash in the Great British Giveaway. That's like having £3,000 each month for an entire year. Extra cash in your bank account that you can do whatever you like with. Take a year off and keep it